welcome back to the World Explorer podcast. This is the podcast where every week we take a random prompt and make an entire world around it. My name is Cassie, and I'm joined with Isaac.
Hello there! So, today we are world building time travel. And this
Dun,
is.
dun, dun.
Yeah, because we haven't done that before. Anyway, so this idea of time travel is a bit different from anything that at least I've seen before, which is essentially a time treadmill. Yeah, that's the best way I can.
You want us to exercise while doing time travel?
More or less. It's the best way I can think to describe this. Anyway, so the idea is that there is positive time and there is negative time. And positive time, or as you can maybe think of it, the positive timeline, is what we are currently living in. And as time moves forward, like in this world, there is a present that is constantly being built, and there is no future that you can travel to. It's just the present just keeps on building forward. But as the present keeps on building forward in positive time, in negative time, the same thing is happening. However, this timeline is just like our world, but everything is functioning in reverse. So if you were to go into the negative timeline, everything starts moving backwards around you. But because you are infused with positive time energy, because you are from the positive time, everything around you is moving in reverse. Like the world that you know is just playing backwards. And the idea that I had was with the time treadmill thing is if you stayed in the negative time long enough, eventually you would go back to the dawn of time where the world began, and then you would find yourself back in the positive time as the world continues going forward. So it basically rewinds itself back to the start, and then you press play and it starts going forward again.
Isaac, I'm about to really disappoint you. You heard of the movie Tenet?
Tenet?
Yeah.
I have heard of it, but from what I understand, nobody understands how that time travel works.
That's true. But what you described is basically how that time travel works.
Is it?
Yeah.
But I thought it was people who were somehow inverted people or whatever. I don't remember what they called it.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie, but like I watched someone do like a full commentary on it because it was kind of interesting. And it's what you're describing kind of sounds like how that works, where like the person can move back in time and everything's moving backwards for them, but they're still moving, like they're still aware that everything's going backwards, and it changes how they do things.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe. I don't know. It's hard for me to say.
But what you sounded an awful lot like the person's commentary.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie either, so I can't tell. But like, I just thought it was like an individual was I guess you could say infused with positive or negative time energy, and that made it so that the stuff they interacted with was moving forwards or backwards if they came into contact with it. So like it's like you could make an object that you drop, move backwards in time, and fly up into your hand, but you have to have dropped it first. From what I understand, that's basically just how the time travel worked in that movie.
No, it sounded so familiar. I felt like it was worth at least mentioning, just in case comments come at us being like, "Oh, this movie does it." You're just describing this movie. I want people to know that I am not completely uncultured. While I have not watched the movie, I have heard of it. And I am aware of its existence.
Yeah, I don't know if this is too similar to Tenet or not. I don't think it is.
I have no clue. No, we'll just keep developing as if Tenet doesn't exist.
Okay.
I just think it was important to mention.
Okay. Anyway, so we've got the positive time. Yeah, I don't know if you would call them timelines, or because it's all one timeline that is
Mm-hmm.
connected at one point where the treadmill just keeps going. And the reason I say treadmill is because time is just constantly moving in one direction the entire time, and you're just standing there being moved along on it.
But you can go against it
You can go against it,
to
and
go backwards.
that's how you wind up in negative time.
Yeah.
If you go against it far enough, you will wind up in negative time, and the world will just start playing backwards around you.
So can you interact with it when it's going backwards?
My thought is the answer has to be yes,
Yeah, or else it's boring.
or else it's boring.
So what impact does that have on like future timelines?
I don't know. This is something I'm wondering about. Like, because something I'm thinking is, if you go into negative time, does that mean that because the two timelines are identical to each other? Does that mean that your negative time version went into positive time, and he's currently acting backwards to them? And when you are in negative time, you look like you're in reverse to everybody around you. But then again, because everything's constantly
But
moving
but at some
backwards.
point but at some point you were always going forward in the timeline, so there's always a forward version of you. Or a positive version of you. Neutral?
Wait,
Is neutral, should we say neutral for if you're in your
well, if there's like
timeline properly?
well, no, what happens is like your two uh the positive you and the negative you swap places, and then if you were to just say like write it towards both write the time towards the center. No, that wouldn't actually work because because you're moving, because you're infused with negative energy in the positive timeline, which is still moving in the same direction as the negative, meaning that the negative version of you is moving
My
backwards
brain
but is
hurts.
going forwards in time. But but no, because all of his interactions with the world.
The idea of them swapping just doesn't make sense because if you go back in time, that doesn't change the fact that at one point you moved forward in time in order for you to be able to go back in time.
Can you repeat that?
No.
Oh,
I just think this opens up way too many paradoxes of like someone goes back in time and then you know that at some point in the future you have to go back in time because at some point in the past you were in the future.
someone has to go back in time because they know that at some point.
Right, because the idea you're suggesting that is when you go back in time, you're just swapping places with the person who was with
Well, no,
yourself from that
it
timeline.
depends on how far you're going back. Because the idea is that if you were to go back in time, say 10 years ago, um, you wouldn't be swapping places with anybody. You would just go back in time, and you would exist in the same time as yourself. So there'd be two of you walking around,
Okay.
moving forward in time. What I'm saying is, if you went back so far to beyond the dawning of time, you enter negative time. But there's a negative version of you that is also going back and entering positive time. And once you enter negative time, that's where everything is running backwards around you.
What? Negative what?
Yeah, that's what,
So what's negative time?
uh,
Like
did you
before you existed?
no negative time. I think you misunderstood how I explained it in the beginning. So so
I think
imagine
I
you've got your
misunderstood
normal
everything.
timeline. You've got your start and you've got your
Okay.
present. That's it, which is the end. That is your normal timeline. Negative time is when you go before the beginning of time. And
What do you mean the beginning of time?
okay, so you've got your
What's
timeline.
the beginning of time?
What?
What's the beginning of time?
I feel like we need to world build
like
that.
creation?
Yeah.
When the world got snapped into existence?
Yes.
Is that the beginning of time?
Yes. And the
So you
idea.
could go that far back,
Yes.
even though you didn't exist at that point?
Yes. And the idea is that if you go so far back to the beginning of time, and then you just keep on going further back, you enter what is negative time. And if you were to be placed in negative time, It is the same as our timeline, except everything is moving backwards, like you press rewind on a VHS tape.
So you're saying that time is like the math line where you hit 0 and then you're like, just keep going and add a negative on it.
Yes, and again, everything around you is playing backwards. Now, if you were to stand still in negative time, this is where the treadmill idea comes in. You will constantly be moving back towards the beginning of time. And once you reach the beginning of time, time starts moving forwards again because you're now moving from negative time into positive time.
So that's why you're going treadmill instead of say like I don't know, when I think of something like that happen, I would almost think that as like a tipping point. Like once you enter the negative time frame, you start moving forward back toward, like you start moving towards the end of that time, the negative, until you're back, you're where you started, but just on the complete other side.
Well, no, the reason that I don't have the treadmill going the opposite direction for negative time is because if you were to do that, then that would mean if you were to go so far back in our positive time and then you hit the dawning of time, you would instantly be snapped into the present of negative time.
Would you though?
Yeah, because
that's not how traveling through.
Well, if you're going so far back that you're entering negative time, yeah. Well, the idea is that they have the same starting point where they meet in the middle. That's both of their starting point, and they're constantly expanding in two different directions.
It just one's reverse of the other.
Yes.
Or like, is this like a mirror type, or inverted?
I guess you could say it's inverted. It's mirrored.
Yeah.
It's just that if you were to place yourself in negative time, you would end up moving closer to the beginning of time, and everything around you is moving backwards. Because it's like you're living in a rewind.
Okay, so in order to move forward in the negative time, you would have to keep moving back in order to keep everything going forward.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
You're making this difficult for me. In order to keep moving forward within negative time, like to keep everything going as like you're accustomed to seeing it, you would have to keep moving backwards.
Yes. Now,
okay.
I have an idea for how people could utilize this form of time travel. Now, it
hurts their brains too much.
So take the timeline that we've got now, where it looks like a treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
Now, bend it to look like a horseshoe. Now, something that I am at.
Are you saying that they can cross between the 2 points?
Yes, this way, like you
skip all the stuff in between.
Yeah, you can skip all the stuff in between and just leap from one point to another.
Can you go at diagonals?
Maybe. We'll figure that out. But my thought is, like, if you were to jump, you could have a situation where, like, maybe somebody is trapped in a cell or something. They need to escape. Well, they can leap into negative time and then have the guard unlock the cell for them. They walk out, they jump back into positive time and escape.
What?
Well, if you're in negative time, then everybody around you is moving backwards.
Yeah, but that doesn't impact the timeline, like the other side of the timeline, just because they're moving.
Well, the idea is that you jump into the other side of the timeline, and so now, everything is moving backwards around you, including the person who locked you up. And so that person comes along, and because he's moving backwards, he unlocks the cell.
That's not. That's not going to be how that works, because you jump onto the other side, and yeah, they move backwards, but they only move backwards as you're going back in time.
Yes.
In that aspect, so you're going back in time, which means when you jump forward, you're still in this, like you've gone back in time on that line, which puts you at a different parallel. So when you jump forward, you're just now back to like the guard unlocking the door for you, and they're gonna relock you back up.
Well, then you just go a little bit further to where they've unlocked it, they've opened it up, and they left. You can give yourself a moment to have them
Yeah, but then you're just. But now people are just like teleporting to different areas.
That's true. Essentially, what we've created is a very complicated version of teleportation. Because what's going to happen is
Yeah.
you're going to be walking, you're going to
Now
be
people are
escorted
just.
to the cell, and then suddenly you're just going to disappear from people's arms because you appeared in the timeline in a different spot.
But actually, you're only like in the cell, but you happen to be. You just ended up in the cell before you were supposed to end up in the cell because of the weird time jumping, and you were walking out of the cell now. That doesn't change the fact you're still in jail. You're just confusing people. This is confused. I don't see this ever working.
But maybe we can work it out.
This. I've seen hope in a lot of the time travels. We've made some successful ones, in my opinion. But like, the more you talk about this, the more I'm like, this doesn't work.
I see no reason why this can't work. It's just a very complicated version of teleportation, which makes it kind of boring.
Yeah, but like, also the moment multiple people have this, it's just a mess. And also, you talked about like if you go into the negative timeline, you switching with your negative person, which means that like nothing really changes. You don't gain anything from
Well,
switching.
your
Like,
negative
I
person
don't
enters
see,
positive
in
time.
my
but
brain, you don't gain anything.
Your negative person enters positive time, but your negative person is moving backwards.
So all you have is two worlds in which people are sometimes moving funny. That's it. Like, nothing. You can't actually change things because you break everything if you change things. You just have sometime. It's just no one would do it. What's the point? Why would you go to a world where suddenly you can't really make sense of much of the world because things are going backwards? Like, that's all it is. It's
Well, how many
pointless.
people have this ability?
Even if you're only one person, why would you do it? About anything, you just have a show where a person figures out they can do it and they're panicked because they don't know how to control it, and they're just acting weird. And next thing you know, they're in a psych ward because people think they've gone crazy because they keep doing this weird backwards dance thing and talking backwards, and someone thinks they're demon possessed or something, and they try to do an exorcism, and his little life is being ruined, and he's babbling about this other world in which everyone's moving
The
backwards
problem
and
is
no
you
one
can't
believes him, and
capture
it
somebody like
ends
this.
with him. Why can't you capture
Because they
them?
move
That
into negative
doesn't-
time, and everything is reversed for them. They just reverse to a point where you are no longer
I think that
trapped.
maybe that's. I think that's what confuses me is. So the only way that like what you're saying makes sense to me, is if there is a definite end to the timeline, and there's a definite beginning.
Well, there is
And on one spectrum, they go from one end to the other end, and in the other spectrum, they go from the other end to that end. But even then, that doesn't make sense because now when you jump
Wait, I'm
across,
confused where the ends need to
you're
come
in like completely different timelines.
I'm confused where the end needs to come in. You're jumping from like the middle of the timeline, or maybe the present of the timeline, rather.
Because you can't go backwards from the same point. You can't, like, if you both start in a place, in the exact same place, and the timelines are the same, quote unquote, then you can't, one of them can't be going backwards unless they started at the other end. That, you
One
can't.
of them can't go backwards
do,
unless
like,
they
that's-
started
that's
at the
where-
other end.
Yeah, because that's the definition of going backwards, is it's starting somewhere else. Like, going,
I am still
you can't both
confused as to why this wouldn't work.
Okay, so you're at your house.
Okay.
Two people are at the house, right? And both of them are gonna go to the supermarket. Need to go to the supermarket. So you have their start, and you have the end. That's what you're suggesting here. You have these two people they both start at the house.
Is one in wait.
They're
Is
both gonna
one in
try to go to the
negative time and
supermarket.
one in positive time?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. How does the negative time get to the supermarket?
So present is constantly expanding in both the negative time and the positive time.
It's both of it's heading towards the supermarket. Got that.
Okay, so as you are walking forward, as a person in positive time goes to the supermarket to get something, negative time is essentially, I guess the best way to describe it is wouldn't even know that they're even going there yet, because the time is because everything's
What?
moving backwards.
Uh-huh.
They're
They're
walking.
leaving the supermarket to come to the house. That's what going
Yes,
backwards is.
they are leaving the
They
secret.
have
Yeah,
to
that's
start
right.
at the other end point.
Kind of, but the thing is, they're
This
leaving.
is why I'm confused. They can't start in the same place and one of them being going backwards.
So the idea is that when let's say that you're driving to the supermarket. The idea is that in the negative time, you are already when you're in the car, you are not exactly. I'm trying to figure out how to describe this. Every action that you make in positive time, there's a mirrored reaction in negative time. And
Okay, but that's not going backwards.
what?
That's not going backwards. That's just a duplicate.
Yeah, it's basically a duplicate. But once you switch into negative time, you will be moving backwards on the treadmill. Like the present is still moving forwards. It's still being built on on the negative timeline.
Okay, all
But you are
right.
moving
Let me return
backwards
to the supermarket and
regardless.
let me see. So let me see what I'm getting. So you both start at the house. You both go on to the supermarket. But if positive time switched with negative time, suddenly that positive time finds himself moving back towards the house.
Yes, kind of. Or rather, everything around.
What's
My
the
thought is,
negative
rather
time?
than moving back towards the house, everyone around him is moving backwards. The world is moving in reverse. All like, you can you can walk forwards, but everybody else in negative time is going to be walking backwards. But
But that's because it's pushing him back. Like the time itself is pushing him back to the time where he was at the house.
yes,
But now technically he's halfway to the supermarket. And then he can finish his walk to the supermarket in the time in which time has pushed him back to the house. So when he switches,
actually, yeah.
he's back in the time where he started at the house, but now he's at the
Actually,
supermarket.
yeah. If you were to walk to the, if you were to
is that what happens?
kind of, let me try and explain it and see if we're on the same page. So like, if he's thrown into
Okay.
negative time, halfway on his trip to the supermarket, then he finishes walking to the supermarket in negative time because everything was moving backwards around him. If he were to leap back into positive time, it's essentially like he never
The time in which he was at the house, but now he's at the supermarket.
Yeah, he essentially managed to travel to the supermarket in a matter of seconds.
Yeah. I can follow
Yeah.
that. That makes sense in my brain. But the key here is that the timeline, we have two timelines that are moving forward. You keep saying that the second timeline is moving backwards. It's not. It's also moving forward. You just move backwards within it
Yeah, basically.
because it's negative and it's pushing you back. That's where my confusion is. That timeline is still that both timelines are trying to get to the supermarket. It's just when you switch timelines, suddenly it's no longer it's going backwards in time until you switch back.
Yeah, basically.
It's
Yeah,
a way
pretty
to give you like more time.
Yes.
And it's a fancy teleporter.
It's a very fancy teleporter.
But so are they two distinctly separate timelines? Or does what happens in one happen in the other?
I don't know. I was thinking we could try and figure that out.
Because if it's what happens in one happens in the other, suddenly, so you have they both start at the house, they both go halfway to the supermarket, he switches time.
At that point, he could be
suddenly
making he would be changing in the future at that point, because if he were to switch time and then go and say like trip somebody in the past.
Exactly, it seems confusing. And also the idea of switching, like your negative person comes there, also confuses me. Like, because what's the negative person? It's because the negative person's still trying to go to the supermarket, so he's gonna go normal. But also, he's moving. My brain's still hurts.
This is a hard
I
one.
understand. I understand how the timelines work. I understand the parallel time lines. I understand what happens when someone jumps in. But I still don't think it works.
This is the challenge of world building unique timeline ideas. Like unique time travel ideas.
Yeah.
Do you think this one might be a lost cause?
It might be. This one's hurt my brain more than like all the others combined. Like, I get what you're trying to do. I understand like I understand it now. I see the vision. But that doesn't change the fact that it's broken.
What time travel isn't broken though?
Cause like but like my ideas I come up with the solution, like there's a negative timeline but there's like no people in it and someone can jump into it, so but they don't really interact with it, then it's just a fancy teleporter and that's boring. But if they can interact with it, there is no way.
It is a more limited teleporter because the ability of teleportation.
But it's not time travel. It's just a teleporter that uses a time travel meta to
Well, the thing is, teleportation is often like, oh, I can go anywhere, anytime, in an instant. This one, like, you have to be able to, like if I wanted to travel halfway across the world, I'd have to be able to make that journey in negative time. You can't, like, that's the sort of area where doing, like, teleporting through negative time instead of just normal teleportation is more limited.
So either we allow there to be people and you can interact with them, but writing that would be a nightmare.
It really would. But what time travel isn't a nightmare to write?
My brain can. This one's even worse.
This one I don't even know how you would properly explain it in a book or something. You can maybe do it in a movie.
Look, I feel like I'm hoping that the home to supermarket analogy I was trying to create makes sense to some people. That's like the simplest way I could fathom the concept. And even then, it's still confusing the heck out of me.
I'm becoming confused by it too, and I came up with the idea.
Well, a lot of time travel ideas sound really smart in your head. And then you start writing them, and you just come up. Some people even go so far as like to fully write a story based off of it because they think they're so smart. And it seems like a great idea, and they solve time travel, and then they pause to think about it.
Yep.
And then it all unravels.
That's how time travel often is. Like, it falls apart pretty much any way you try to make it. Like, I think that the one version of time travel that we managed to make that was the most stable was probably the one where time moved through objects instead of you moving through time.
I do love that one.
Yeah, that one worked out so well.
That one was a fascinating one. And I think the time travel elevator, which was our very first ever podcast,
was a memory elevator.
Was an interesting play with time. Yeah, the memory elevator. It was a very interesting play with time. It wasn't time travel. It started as time travel, but it's not. But was like an interesting play on time. And then we have the River of Time one, which was a mess, but at least it was a...
We eventually got it
doable
working.
Mess. We got it working. But this one, I think this one's stumping me. It's just... It's so weird. Like, it's just... No matter what I do in my head, it doesn't work.
Yeah. But then there was also ChatGPT's version of time travel, which was surprisingly stable.
But to be fair, we didn't pick at it too much because we were too busy making fun of its government.
Yeah, but also the reason we were making fun of the government is because we couldn't make fun of the fact that the time travel didn't work. Our original goal was to pick apart how the time travel worked, but we were shocked to find that it actually created a really solid, logical version of time travel.
Do you think ChatGPT can solve our time travel problem?
I honestly don't know. It's a maybe. ChatGPT is strangely inconsistent when it comes to logic puzzles. Sometimes it like blows my mind at the way that it solves problems like this, and other times it's just really, really dumb.
I don't think it could solve this one. I think it would look at you and say, "What the heck are you talking about? Two timelines going forward at the same time and negative." Like I don't think I could explain it enough to ask it to solve the problem.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, this seems like a really depressing way to end
Just
the
as
podcast.
our
where
first
like,
failure.
Yeah, guys, we tried.
Of,
It might be of a world. Yeah.
okay, I guess this is where we leave it up.
It was bound to
This is
happen.
where we leave it up to the comments, and we're just like, hey guys, fix this. If you could follow along, if you could.
I don't think we even explained it enough for them.
Yeah, I'm sitting here like, if you
fix
can
it.
manage to follow along with how this time travel's supposed to work, fix it, please. Horseshoe, two timelines connected at the end of the horseshoe, constantly expanding, and one's negative time moving backwards, the other is positive time moving forwards, and you can leap between the two.
Good luck. I'm gonna go rest my brain.
You know, it honestly doesn't seem too complicated when I explain it like that. It's when you start getting into the weeds
Yes,
of
but then
it.
you think
And when you
about
think
it.
about it, and we get into the weeds of how
But
it
then
all
you
works,
think
then it starts
about
falling
it,
apart.
and then it goes.
didn't even get to the
yeah.
pregnant
See,
lady.
that's it. It sounds
We didn't
simple.
even get to the pregnant woman paradox.
Nope, my brain's done. It's quitting. It's shutting down. You're gonna have to do the outro now. My brain power doesn't have enough energy for it. You've killed it.
Bye.
I see you have no brain power left either. Alright, goodbye everyone.